The Vikings were a tribe that left a remarkable mark on human history. They were known as fierce warriors, pirates, explorers, and brilliant traders with legendary expeditions. So, what secrets about the Vikings are waiting to be discovered? Let's explore with me and watch this video until the end. If you're new here, please give me a like and subscribe to the channel. Who were the Vikings? Where were the Vikings? The Vikings were a tribe from the Scandinavian peninsula, which included Norway, Denmark, Iceland, Sweden, and Finland in ancient times from the 8th to the 11th century. Although the Vikings are often mentioned as warriors or pirates, in reality they were also explorers, geographers, farmers, and brilliant merchants. They carried out sea voyages on their longships, reaching across Europe and the Atlantic Ocean. They attacked, invaded, and settled in wealthy lands they conquered. In addition, the Vikings left behind many cultural achievements. The runic alphabet system, Norse mythology stories such as Thor and Loki. The Viking Age. The glorious era lasted for more than 300 years. The Viking Age took place from around 753 to 1066. During this period, the Vikings carried out many expeditions on longships called Raka ships to cross the North Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. They landed in cities and coastal fishing villages across Europe, Southwest Asia, the North Atlantic, and even northeastern America. Their purpose was not only to trade, but also to raid and even to conquer new territories. For example, the Danish Vikings devastated and plundered islands in England, Iceland, and Francia. The Norwegian Vikings expanded their ambitions to Scotland, the Orkney Islands, the Faroe Islands, Iceland, and Greenland. The Swedish Vikings turned eastward, advancing into Russia and even reaching the Byzantine Empire. In addition to trade and conquest, they also worked as mercenaries, engaged in slavery, and played a role in the development of European feudalism. During this time, Viking society had not yet formed nations, but only small communities in independent villages. The formation of Nordic nations only took place during the medieval period. 8 astonishing facts about the Vikings. The Vikings, warriors from the north, were not only famous for their strength and ferocity, but also left behind mysteries and fascinating facts that astonish us today. 1. The Vikings were not dirty. Contrary to the rough image, they were extremely clean. They used combs, razors, tweezers, and even bathed at least once a week, something rare in medieval Europe. 2. Unique hairstyles. They liked to keep long bangs, braid their hair neatly, and cut the back short. Some even bleached their hair and beards with lye to get a striking blonde color. 3. Fond of blonde hair. Blonde hair was the ideal beauty standard among the Vikings. Those who didn't have it bleached their hair to look more authentically Viking. 4. Vikings didn't wear horned helmets. The famous horned helmet image came from artistic romanticism. In reality, Viking warriors wore round iron helmets without any horns that could hinder combat. 5. Mythology in everyday life. The days of the week were named after Norse gods: Odin for Wednesday, Thor for Thursday, and Frigg for Friday. This shows how deeply religion influenced their daily lives. 6. Not giants as depicted. The average Viking was only about 1.7 meters tall, often slim due to harsh climates and limited food supplies. The image of giant northerners was an exaggeration. 7. Belief in the afterlife. The Vikings believed that after death, souls would go to different realms depending on how they lived and fought. For brave warriors, that place was Valhalla, Odin's great hall. 8. Ship burials. Many Viking leaders were buried with ships, weapons, food, and even slaves. These were meant as provisions for their journey to the afterlife. 9. They loved skiing. In the frozen north, skiing was not just for fun but also a winter means of transport. They could be called Europe's very first skilled skiers. 10. Dragon-headed ships. Some records and carvings show that Viking ships had dragon decorations at the prow. These were meant to intimidate enemies and ward off evil spirits. 11. Vikings reached America first. More than 500 years before Columbus, Leif Erikson and his crew set foot in North America. That area is now Newfoundland, Canada. 12. No proof of tattoos. Some Arabic writings mention northerners with marks on their skin, but archaeology hasn't confirmed it. In fact, they valued cleanliness highly, making tattoos unlikely. 13. Early legal system. The Vikings established the Althing, the world's oldest surviving parliament, dating back to the 10th century. However, sometimes justice was still delivered through violence. 14. Onion soup to diagnose wounds. After battles, Viking healers gave warriors onion soup. If the smell of onion came from a belly wound, it meant the injury was fatal. 15. Slave trading. Slaves were one of their most profitable commodities. They captured slaves from conquered lands and sold them across Europe and the Middle East. 16. King Harold Bluetooth. The name Bluetooth comes from King Harold Bluetooth. He united Viking tribes and connected them into one strong kingdom. 17. Weddings lasted a week. Viking weddings lasted for 7 days with feasting, rituals, and mead. It was a grand event that showcased the family's wealth. 18. Not the only people in Scandinavia. Besides the Vikings, Scandinavia was also home to the Sami, semi-nomadic people living off reindeer herding. The two groups traded and sometimes intermarried with the nobility. The origins of Viking brutality. The Vikings were infamous for their brutality, striking fear across Europe from 793 to 1066. They not only raided and conquered, but also settled permanently in lands such as Iceland, Scotland, England, and France. What turned Scandinavian farmers into the nightmare of Europe? According to historians, the key factors were climate crises and famine since the 6th century, the advent of the sail, a technology that allowed the Vikings to travel farther, faster, and more efficiently. Scandinavian society shifted toward militarization, where both men and women glorified warfare. All these shaped Viking society into one that was fierce, brutal, yet daring and adventurous. The nightmare of all Europe. From the icy lands of Scandinavia, lying between the Baltic Sea and the North Sea, a fierce wave arose in the 8th century. They were the Vikings, warriors, sailors, and the bringers of terror to all of Europe. For over 300 years they sailed far and wide. With longships crafted with precision and unmatched seafaring skills, the Vikings reached lands that few had ever imagined. According to archaeologist Neil Price from Uppsala University, they set foot in at least 37 countries, from distant Afghanistan to the shores of Canada. On these journeys, they did not only spread fear, but also opened thriving trade routes. The Vikings traded luxury goods with more than 50 cultures. They wore Eurasian belts, dressed in Chinese silk, and filled their pouches with silver coins from the Islamic world. Thanks to this, they built prosperous cities like York in England and Kiev in Eastern Europe, established colonies in Iceland, France, Greenland, and even North America. Across all of Europe, no other people dared to venture so far from their homeland. Only the Scandinavians could do this, Price affirmed. Only the Vikings. Yet, trade and exploration were only part of the story. What truly terrified Europe were the sudden attacks and brutality of Viking pirates. In England and northern Europe, they suddenly landed on coasts, pillaged villages, and loaded their ships with loot. In northern France, they sailed up the Seine and many other rivers, burning, raiding, and demanding a price for peace. At one point, the Vikings extorted nearly 14% of the entire Carolingian Empire's economy in exchange for promises to stop attacking. In England, the initial small raids gradually turned into full-scale wars. The Viking armies conquered up to 3 Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, leaving behind fields littered with rotting corpses. The Viking Age was not an anomaly, Neil Price said. But the great question remains, why? What turned seemingly ordinary Scandinavian farmers into the brutal nightmare of an entire continent? Why did the Vikings disappear? New research suggests that climate change was a major cause. During the 14th, 5th, 10th centuries, the Little Ice Age led to failed harvests, harsh weather, and food shortages. Trade was also disrupted due to increasing ice and frozen seas. Gradually, Viking communities in Greenland and elsewhere declined and eventually vanished.